Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Maya Luria with TMC for Seniors, and today we're going to be talking about vaccines unmasked, the power of immunizations. I have Dr. Carlos Borras with me here. He is with TMCOne. Thank you so much for being here today, Dr. Borras. How are you?
Good, and you?
Good. So you do have an online audience that is watching along with an in-person audience. So if you're watching from home, please leave any questions in the chat and I will be sure to get those answered when Dr. Borras is done. And you can go ahead. You should be able to see your screen there.
Great. So thank you for having me. Thank you for coming. I know it's hard to come. So we wanted to have an open forum about vaccinations. It's a really, great subject specifically in the last 5 years after COVID and all that. And I really like interactive, lectures, in a way, questions that you guys have and all that stuff. So with that, let's start. So we're going to go through a lot of the questions that I get from patients that I have, or in the city, is seems to me that the patients don't really know what a vaccine is, and why do we use vaccines? Everybody uses the term, but how many of you guys here know what a vaccine is? How many of you guys know how a vaccine works? More or less, right? Good. So and how many vaccines types we have and all that jazz. And doesn't it seem like there's a ton of vaccines now, that we're talking about it? The funny part is there's only 3 new ones, but I get that question a lot. It's like, why are we having all these vaccines now? And I'm like, no, they've been around, to kind of refresh people's memory. Does anybody know when the first vaccine actually started? Historically?
1890s.
Close, a little bit less than that, about 100 years earlier than that, well, when you get that far out, right? So smallpox, and the doctor at that point, 1700s, pulled a sample of blood and gave it to a kid that was 8 years old to see if mom had smallpox and to see if the kid would either die or not. Fortunately, we don't do that anymore. And it's the first patient who actually survived and didn't get smallpox. He didn't know what happened, but he just thought about it, So vaccines have been around for a long time. It is a very tedious work that we do, trying to figure out what they are and how they are and how to use it and which ones to pick out of, all the diseases that we have in the world. Okay. So the other thing that I'd like you guys to see is understand, and we have some more handouts over here that if you want to pick them, the CDC has a scheduled vaccination protocol for adults and for kids. And you guys have some of the slides, the ones that it's in color. We'll see those too. And the handout that I have over here has actually the whole schedule, so it's a pretty extensive one. But if you guys are interested in how we think, they're right there. So wanted to start with a video. So how do we turn it on?
You should be able to just click it.
Hold on. Click on it.
Click, yeah, with the mouse.
No.
Oh. There.
I don't even know where the mouse is. Where's the...
Oh, it's on.
Oh, it's over here. So,
yeah.
Sorry, not a computer guy. There you go. And this is just a YouTube video that I found.
An important role in protecting us from infectious disease. But how do they work? Well, put simply, vaccines train our immune system to detect and attack pathogens. And we're going to walk you through how they do it from start to finish. Our immune system is a marvelously complex network of molecules and cells, which has the power to destroy pathogens like viruses and bacteria. The part of the immune system that vaccines train is called the adaptive immune system. Its first job is to recognize an invader. In the case of this bacterium, it does this by detecting molecular markers called antigens, that are part of all pathogens. After detecting an antigen, the adaptive part of the immune system starts mounting a bespoke response. These cells convert to plasma cells and start creating proteins called antibodies, which bind specifically to the antigen. Together with immune cells called phagocytes, antibodies can destroy the pathogen. Produces killer T cells, which have the ability to detect and destroy cells infected with the pathogen. But it doesn't end there. To prevent against future infections, the adaptive immune system also has a memory. It produces long-lived memory cells, which lie in wait, ready to pump out the right antibodies and killer T cells if the same pathogen is ever seen again. This is called immunity. Vaccines work by activating the adaptive immune system and so creating immunity. They safely introduce antigens for the immune system to train on, preparing itself to fight real infections in the future. So what actually goes into a vaccine? Well, there are several different types. One of the most common are called live attenuated vaccines. These include things like MMR or BCG. Live attenuated vaccines work by introducing a weakened version of a living pathogen into the body. These attenuated pathogens are not strong enough to cause disease in people with healthy immune systems, but they can still trigger a strong immune response. Live attenuated vaccines trigger a similar immune response to a real infection, leaving behind the same memory cells. This means that some can provide a lifetime of protection after just 1 or 2 doses. Another key type of vaccine is called a subunit or recombinant vaccine. They work differently. Instead of a live sample, subunit vaccines contain only part of the pathogen. For instance, the vaccine for human papillomavirus, HPV, uses hollow virus-like particles made from a protein found in HPV. Alone, these subunits cannot get the immune system's attention, and so they need a bit of help from another ingredient, an adjuvant. Adjuvants wake up the immune system, triggering it to see the subunit antigens and start creating antibodies and memory cells. Subunit vaccines contain no live pathogens, and so lack the genetic information needed to replicate. That means they are not infectious and are safe even for people with weakened immune systems. Great, but generally, they don't trigger the production of as many memory cells compared to live attenuated vaccines, and so they don't provide such long-lasting protection. Training the immune system through vaccination helps protect individuals from infection, but vaccines can also protect people who can't receive them. This is called herd protection, or herd immunity. Herd immunity is created when a large percentage of a population is immune to a disease. It works by disrupting chains of infection. Without new hosts to infect, pathogens can't survive. That means that if a pathogen tries to infect someone who is vaccinated and so immune, it dies, and the chain of infection is broken. If enough chains are broken in a population, it becomes very difficult for pathogens to reach those who would be vulnerable. Herd immunity protects millions of people around the world, but if vaccination rates drop, there is a risk that diseases can reappear. For example, measles was declared eradicated in the United States in 2000. But since then, falling vaccination rates have led to a resurgence of the disease with outbreaks recorded in 31 states. If herd immunity is maintained for long enough though, diseases can be eradicated completely. For example, smallpox, which is estimated to have killed 300 million people in the 20th century, is now considered extinct. All thanks to vaccination, its training regime, and the wonders of herd immunity.
You do it. Yeah. So that's a summary of immunology for 9 months in medical school. So, any questions about that? There's a lot of information that came through that video. Go ahead.
Well, you said the smallpox is gone, but now we have Mpox.
Yes, a little bit different, right? And it's a specific population. The homosexual men, so the key there is going to be, the key there is people need to vaccinate for diseases not to come. I mean, that's kind of the at the end of the day, what the reality is, right? So, and Mpox, like you said, is up in the rise. There is a vaccine for that, and we have it available. We don't have it in the clinics, because it's a small population of people that we have it today.
Can other people get it?
Yes, they can, but they have to be exposed. So most people are not, but I mean, it is a population. I mean, and I take care of a lot of patients like that, and we protect them. Interestingly, that population, they'll get whatever. They're like, you tell me, doc, and I'll just take it because, they understand it's high risk. Go ahead.
So, I really don't know what I'm talking about, but I thought smallpox and shingles were somehow related, and
No.
smallpox, no?
No, completely different.
Okay.
So think about,
Chickenpox, that's it.
well, chickenpox is different, right?
Okay.
Shingles and chickenpox is the same.
Okay.
We'll talk about that in a little bit.
Okay, good.
So what I did is I there's a lot of stuff in there, and I wanted people to understand and go through the details of which vaccine does what, because that's really the biggest complaint. And I don't know if you picked up that they add an adjuvant to a vaccine. Everybody hates that because that's what makes them sick. But when I have a patient that I give him the flu shot today, right, and he calls me tomorrow, it's like, I feel like crap, I get super excited because that means the vaccine is working. And I tell him, it's like, tomorrow you're going to feel crappy. That's actually the point. I'm making you feel crappy, but there's a reaction to that, and that's part of that video. Questions so far, so we can keep. And we have all the time you want, so. Okay, so. So, as we understand, so there are two ways, I explain this to my patients all the time. There are two ways that you could, be protected from a disease. You can either get the disease and survive it, or you can get a shot, And the idea of the shot, think about a military invasion. You could get one soldier coming and you kill it, or you could get 100 million coming at you, and you may survive it. So that's the way you should think about it. So we invented vaccines in several different ways to try to stimulate the defensive cells, the T cells in our body, to recognize the disease. So the next time that you get exposed to it, I'll go out to dinner, somebody sneezes, or somebody sneezes here and it's in the air. When I get it, because you will get it, your body will recognize it and then it will destroy it. That's the theory. Everybody go with that? Okay, perfect. So it increases your body's natural defenses to build resistance to a specific infection, whatever infection it is, Then it trains the memory cells to remember it later on. That's everything that a vaccine does in many different ways, okay? So recognizes the virus or bacteria, and then produces antibodies, and then it creates memory cells, so almost like a library, that it will remember it next time you get exposed to it, and then it will destroy it before it actually becomes a disease. Yes?
So I got COVID twice, and they told me to keep getting vaccinations.
Yes.
Why is that?
Moving target,
Okay.
right? So there are a couple of things that we're going to discuss, right? When we built, I'll show you in a minute. So we start vaccinations early because babies they don't have all this library, so we got to give it to them. Moms start doing that when they give them the breast milk, something called colostrum that has a bunch of antibodies, and the baby starts, ingesting them. So in your hands, you have the vaccination schedules. That's a really complex way of looking at how we vaccinate patients. So we're not going to deep dive into that, but I think it goes by age, and then you look at your age, and then you could take that to your doctor and say, what do I qualify for one of these? But this is really, really the way we do it, All right, so this is the important part. Tomorrow, an idea that we want to try to create a vaccine X, whatever bacterial virus, just pick one, right? It takes about 10 years for the vaccine to be ready, right? And it goes through all these stages that are super important, right? It goes through, the basic research, discovery of the research, that go into preclinical trials. That's in the lab somewhere. Then after that, they do phase 1 trials, phase 2 trials, phase 3 trials in the lab with a very small population to see how they react, who lives, who dies, how long does the immunity last, Then the FDA reviews that. Then after that, an independent panel reviews that. And then we go into what we consider stage 1 through 4 trials, which is, the last part. Meanwhile, between the orange and the blue, there's information going back and forth between the researchers. Go ahead.
There was no time for that, for the COVID vaccine. None of this stuff happened.
Makes you wonder, right?
Yeah.
So now you have, and that's the point that I'm trying to bring, between, again, the orange and the blue, back and forth emails, hey, Carlos, I saw this patient here that did this and this and this. We got to change this and this and this. And then I go back and I readjust this trial. Then I go back in the next week and see how the patient's doing. This is years in the making. COVID vaccines were at stage 3 trials. And when there is an emergency, we forget stage 4. We just deploy and as fast as I can, because we're saving lives, So a lot of the media saw that is something interesting in my mind. You guys saw a stage 3 trial. Well, you've never seen a stage 3 trial. Fauci would step up one day and say A, and the next day he would say B, the next day he would say C. That is actually science behind that. But people don't understand that. So we got a lot of good data from COVID, and nowadays it's stage 4 plus, right? We know how to vaccinate them. We know what to do. We know how to change the DNA sequence or the RNA sequence on the vaccines, so it matches the virus that it's active today. Okay. So, but this is kind of how the life works. So these are the vaccination schedules. And you could see on the top, you could see ages, you could see, on the left, you'll see your vaccines. And all of these have been here for a long time, So next page will give you more complicated vaccines or more specialized. People don't know about them as much. But, and you see on the bottom monkeypox, and you'll see notes because they're specific populations, Questions so far? Now we're going to start on the stuff that you guys want to know. Okay, so go ahead.
So this COVID vaccine
COVID.
has a lot of downsides to it. I have a friend who got a shot. She got vertigo. She went to the doctor. He says, I've been seeing this, and you're not the only one.
Absolutely.
Perfect. As far as I know, she still got it.
Right.
She can't ride horses anymore. She's dizzy.
Right. I have patients like that.
So, that is serious.
Right.
Seriously terrible stuff from a vaccine.
Right.
And maybe heart, electrical. I don't know what else. I don't know all the side effects of this vaccine. You do, but
yeah. Well, we know a lot of them. So out of the 4,000 drugs and a lot of vaccines that I have, nothing's for free. Nothing is, even Tylenol, that's the #1 drug that girls use today to kill themselves. Go eat a bottle of Tylenol, you're dead in 6 hours. So that happens. So then what happens is we as physicians, as population-based management, you have to look at how many people are you helping, how many people are you hurting, what is the balance. So seriously, there are no drugs that I have that would have passed if I would have said, I don't want any patient hurt.
do you hand out something that says, if I give you this vaccine, these are the side effects that could potentially happen, the vertigo thing?
Yeah.
You do tell people before you?
We tell them, yes. Oh, yeah, I do. I do in my practice. I can't talk for everybody.
Yeah.
Like I tell them about the flu, like I tell them about, RSV. I get vaccinated couple yesterday for RSV, and couple before that for Tdap because they're seeing their grandkids. And, You're not allowed to see your grandkid if it's less than 6 months unless you have a whooping cough vaccine. And I agree with that, by the way. So I said, hey, this is what's going to happen. This is what's going to feel. The limited part, right? The package insert, which is what you're asking, is huge. So there are side effects, and that's kind of where we leave it, right? Because I don't know who's going to get the side effects for heart disease, for hypertension, for anything, right? The other studies that came out, there's a lot of data that came out during COVID that was wrong. And the population didn't know how to interpret metadata. We look at p-values, we look at n-values, we look at where it's coming from. When a study, like the French study about those dual medicines for COVID, it has like 50 patients. That's not statistical analysis, right? So when we did the statistical analysis after that with time, it didn't prove that those medications help, So that's the part that is really hard right now. Anybody can go into the internet and put their opinion and people will follow it, In my world, there's data that has to follow everything that we do, So percentages of people who get tinnitus or get vertigo, people who get myocarditis from the vaccine versus and age groups, So, how many people do I give them a vaccine and they die from it, or they die, period, so go ahead.
I work in nursing homes.
Yeah.
And I actually had a patient that died a week after receiving the COVID vaccine.
Right.
He developed Alzheimer's, something else. And
Right.
I have another one that's 30-some years old
Mhm.
that has Guillain-Barre's disease,
Right.
and he's been bedridden now for 4 years and,
Right.
and can't get out. So
And that happens, flu vaccines, there's Guillain-Barre, from flu vaccines, the vaccines get made, even though the data in science says that there's no vaccine that actually has given Guillain-Barre. I worked in a hospital that had a Guillain-Barre ward, so I saw that, right? So it'll go back to statistics. How many people can I save? I'll put it in a different way. If we wouldn't have deployed COVID, how many more people would have died? My father-in-law died from COVID, the day before he could get a shot. Me, I would have stole a shot and gave it to him if I could. He lived in Baltimore, 5 miles from Hopkins, best hospital in the world. So there's a story for all of them, and I agree. There are symptoms and things that happen. What I can't tell you, and I can't tell any of my 1,000 patients, is who's going to get what. I don't know. I tell them I'm going to give you a shot. I think this is the best for you. Your medical diseases, if you have COPD, diabetes, hypertension, get a vaccine. Because statistically, the chances of you dying from the disease are higher than if you, yeah. Go ahead.
COVID is that the vaccine for that? Is that the live actuated or
No.
the
No, so
RNA?
let's, two more slides. So pneumonia vaccine, pneumonia, most common, right? So pneumococcal pneumonia, it's indicated for 65 and older and indicated for people who have very specific diseases. It is a dead vaccine. What you're talking about is live attenuated, dead vaccine, mRNA. So we're going to talk about mRNA in a little bit, right? So the pneumonia vaccine is what I tell my patients, that this is the dead vaccine that has little reaction to you, but it has little side effects. So go take it and go play golf because you're going to be fine. There's a 15 that came out. There's a 13 that came out way when. The numbers are strains of pneumococcal pneumonia. Okay. So the latest is you'll hear 15, you'll hear 23, and now you'll hear 20. It's because we're getting better at selecting the strains that are more effective in the disease in the population, so we can protect them. This to me is a no-brainer. This one you go get it.
How long is that good for?
So that is a really good question. So the only thing that I can't study is you, right? Because I don't know how your immune system works, and I don't know how reaction your immune system works, right? So I'll pick on me. I don't respond to vaccines. So I had hepatitis B vaccine, physician, high risk, because I deal with blood all day, 3 times.
You can't get a vaccine?
No, I can get them. I get all of them. you know,
But what were you saying?
but I don't react to the hepatitis B vaccine. So I'm a non-reactive person. So I'm always at risk every time I draw blood. So if I give you a pneumonia shot, statistically, it should last 3 to 5 years to 10 years, depending on your history. But that's a really good guess from the studies. You, I don't know, because I don't know how you react. Statistically, we go by the schedule because we're going to get more patients than anything else, you know? So, but this is a good vaccine that I put a picture of the pneumococcal vaccine, the pneumococcus. The reason because that this is a dead vaccine, what we do is we grab that bacteria, we kill it, we break the shell, it's a coconut, and the little Y's and the little, sticks are in the shell. That's what we give you. And then you react mildly to it, and hopefully you have good memory. Okay, cool. Another new toy. So if you notice, smooth coconut, right? Spiky. The more spiky, the more virulent this is, the more aggressive it is, right? The other thing is how it conducts, if it's airborne versus droplets. COVID is droplets, fortunately. Airborne, the whole planet would have got it, Droplets means that it's in our spit and it has a lifetime as it flies out of your mouth, right? Remember the 6 feet? Put a mask on, I've been in rooms with patients in active COVID that they haven't told me, and I don't have a mask and they have a mask and I didn't get them because I'm 6 feet away, and I get out of the room and I go put a mask and I come back in, right? It has to be contact, Also, I get every vaccine on the planet, so I should have more memory, and that's debatable. But this guy, highly virulent, right? Because this flies everywhere. It's from kids. So as parents vaccinate their kids, it will help us, all adults. It's designed for 65 and older. It is a flu-like symptom. And there are currently 2 vaccines that we have. Older adults, older than 60, or specific disease states, and then pregnant females, pregnant individuals. So another good recommendation. My patient panel is about 72 and older, so I use it a lot sometimes, depending on how many grandkids they have. A lot of Sagalburg people who don't see any kids, so this is more optional, but it's out there. Shingles. So has anybody ever seen shingles, active shingles? Yeah, not a lot of fun, right? Has anybody seen post-herpetic neuralgia? That pain that you get from shingles for the first 7 days? Burning, like somebody putting a iron. Imagine that for the rest of your life. The rest of your life. I got to give you 4 drugs, you're going to be drooling in a corner. There's no way around that, because the nerve gets activated and it doesn't stop, We cut nerves, we do ablations, we block nerves, we try to help them as much as we can. Something called Ramsay-Hunt syndrome, that's the bottom one. It's 80% deafness in the first 24 hours from shingles in the ear. So we take shingles very seriously. The pain always precedes the rash, tingling, burning, and then the rash shows. The rash is in the middle of your body, only one side. If it crosses the middle, it's not shingles. Okay, that's really important. Sorry, it looks like that. So shingles vaccine is actually one of the ones that follow the question that you had. Zostavax came a long time ago, probably about 10 years ago, and it was 1 shot. And it was sold, I remember the day. This is your lifetime shot. You only get 1 shot and you're done. And then 3 years later, when we do the post stage 4 trials and we looked at immunity, there was no immunity. So Pfizer is a good company, making a lot of money. They will go back and reformulate it. And usually what we do is we give 2 dosages to challenge the body more. So the current shingles vaccine, you have to revaccinate everybody. It is 2 shots, 3 months apart. The older you are, the more you need it. The more immunocompromised, the more you need it. The more under stress, the more you need it. So it's recommended. it is on a solution that actually has an adjuvant, like we talked before. So this one hurts. This one makes you, crappy the other day. So I tell my patients, get it Friday, hang out at home Saturday, and you're going to be okay.
What is the side effect, long-term side effects?
None that we actually have found, So that's a trick answer to that trick question. So you have to report it, we have to follow it, and we have to link it, right? So I haven't seen any, and we had vaccinate a lot, and I flip it the other way around too. When I vaccinate you, I wait for the other shoe to drop. I have patients that I've been tracking for 20 years. Did you get shingles or not? And when did you get shingles? Because again, scientists, right? Oh, you got it at 19 years, or you got it at 10 years, or you didn't get it at all. Your husband got it and you didn't get it. Not contagious, but, because it is chickenpox laying in the nerve.
I thought it was contagious.
Not contagious. You have it already.
And the blister breaks and
It's in the virus, so you should not touch it, but it's in the person already from chickenpox previously.
they're not the blisters, when somebody else touches you, you're oozing blisters.
Right. So you should not touch those, but it's not like molluscum contagiosum that it is in the virus, right? So what I tell patients, what I do myself, put a glove on, be careful, right? Especially if you're caretaking, because if you're moving to the patients, and they have it, very painful. So questions. You could go blind, you could go deaf, by the way. And I've seen patients die from encephalitis. Yes, it's like that,
Does it make a difference if you're under 50 and you get the shingles vaccine?
That's a really good question. So I'm not supposed to answer that question, but I'll tell you what my personal opinion.
A bunch of people that also didn't want to answer the question.
I will tell you what my personal opinion is.
Okay.
If you want to pass a medication through the FDA approval process, the more you limit the study, the more chances you have to pass it. We're not going to talk about it, but Gardasil is specifically for that. Gardasil is the only vaccine that we have that prevents cancer. Think about that. So the study was girls 9 to 18, then 9 to 25, then 9 to 27. And now we opened it, right? So the body's still the same. Theoretically, you could do it, right? For your question, theoretically, you could do it. I can't recommend it because it's not in the range.
No, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
I think a while ago I saw some research on people under 50 who were at risk and they got it. It was like no big deal. But,
Yeah. That's what I would expect. No big deal. 28 and older, go for it.
And
But
when I was doing a vaccination project, and someone came in and they were under 50 and they wanted to get shingles, they had a whole big chunk of money for it.
yes,
If you're over 50, it's not a big chunk of money. It might-
or free.
It might be free.
Yeah, some insurance companies are free. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Gardasil, how
Yes.
many strains of the human papillomavirus doesn't it treat? It doesn't treat them all,
It treats 4 strains
out of how many?
out of a ton.
So,
This is the thought.
yeah,
You could look at the population you're serving, right? I look at, I don't know, all the 12-year-old girls in Tucson who get HPV. Then I go test them, right? And then I go look, oh yeah, there are 59 strains of HPV or more, but they only get these 4. And I can only pack so much into a vaccine, right? You can't pack the whole planet. That's why you have 2 different pneumonia shots, 3, and there's another one coming, because the strains, vary. So when you look at statistically across the US, across the world, what are the 4 that actually, are more prevalent? That's what we hit. So you have to look at it that way, Cholera, Ebola is typical. Why don't I vaccinate you for Ebola? Because there's none Ebola in the US, right? You go to Africa, trust me, you're gonna get typhoid, you're gonna get Ebola, you're gonna get a pack of Cipro, a pack of a bunch of stuff, because now you become, you're going to the area that has it. So that's the way you should think about it. So, because again, nothing's for free. I'm giving you something that could have a side effect. Let me protect my patient. Go ahead.
Back to the shingles. So never had chicken pox.
Right.
She'll still should get shingle shot?
Yes.
Really?
Protect them. Immunocompromised. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, right? Remember, I look at vaccines, me personally, as benefits, not hinders, right?
You don't have to have chicken pox to get shingles previously.
No. No.
It can exist as a non.
No. You won't get the disease, but you're at risk, right? You could get chicken pox again. Maybe it'll protect you. There's some places.
She's never had it.
Right. So there are places, for
She could get
example.
chicken pox, and then she could get shingles.
So there's places, for example, that I do work evaluations for that they will make me test the patient to see if they're immune to chicken pox, and if not, get the vaccine. So it's usually military, by the way, and the big places down here, So post-herpetic neuralgia, everybody understands that one, right? Burning forever. This is what it looks like. And it's, it follows something called a dermatome. Anybody familiar with that? Dermatome is the distribution of nerves, almost like a wiring diagram for your house, for nerves in our body. So it will come across, it will not go this way, because the nerves come around, Right, COVID-19. So that's a little picture of the COVID virus right there on the right. And you see the little spike proteins. So everybody became familiar with COVID. I always find it funny that the vaccine came out, the trials so quickly, paranoid, but we had a vaccine on the works because there were other strains of coronaviruses that they were working on before that, and it matched pretty similarly because the base nucleotides were about the same, and that's why we can move on quickly enough. The transmission of the virus is through respiratory droplets. And again, droplets, just think about little kind of drops coming out of your mouth as I'm speaking, Patient presents with flu-like symptoms. It's usually about 3 to 5 days after presentation. It could be uncontaminated. I saw a study coming out of the East Coast that it stayed in stainless steel for like 18 hours after somebody just touched it, because stainless steel is not flat, right? It's got cracks in it, microscopic. So and then what happens is you touch it, then I touch my face, and then here we go, Again, cough, fever, shortness of breath. That actually has evolved a little bit. I have patients who come in with more sinus problems, headaches, and they actually test positive, not the true original. I saw one of the first patients that we have here. She died, unfortunately. She had acute influenza when I saw her, and she was sick as a dog within 14, 20 hours. Husband was fine, living with her, being with her, Mexican, white American, So that's when the idea of genetic manipulation came, because, it was hitting people in a different way. She died within 3 days.
She was the Mexican.
Yes. And her husband and her son never got it. Actually, no, they did get it. They kept it. There were no vaccines at that point. We were basically triaging patients at that point. TMC was full and then some, We threw every toy that we had to this lady, and we couldn't, she didn't make it, severity today varies significantly. Remember, vaccines are designed for you not to get sick, right? But we always think about COVID. The COVID vaccine is designed for you not to end up in the hospital and die, right? So if you get COVID after a shot and you survive it and life is good, cool. That's vaccine did its job, right? Not to a full extent, but it did its job. So the mortality rates went down, everything went down, the virus changed. It tracked really like like influenza from the flu pandemic. I remember a meeting in day one, and they asked me, bosses up in the C-suite, is like, what do you think is going to happen? I'm like, this is going to be 3 years of hell, because that's what flu did then. But a lot of people, we didn't have anything. And look at all the people that died. Here, we mobilized, we pulled it out of stage 3, we used it, we tweaked it, and I think it saved a ton of people, over millions more that would have died. That's just here, And now, interesting, I might diagnose 5 a month when it was 30 a day, and none of them die.
But they're called like a cold.
It's a cold. Some of them I give them Paxlovid, because there's reasons for that. They're sick, they're compromised, they're diabetics, they're hypertensive, they're vulnerable people. And I don't want them to get long haulers COVID syndrome, which it is a thing, but again, and I try to vaccinate. So the cool part about mRNA vaccines. So let's talk about that for a second. So the flus of the world, those are live vaccines. I give you the disease. The pneumonias of the world are dead vaccines. I give you the skeleton of the disease. Okay. Now we have mRNAs. So why did we come up with mRNAs? Well, one, more specific. Flu I have to build 6 months before, 9 months before the season starts, right? And I have to grow them on eggs. And so I do a best guess using good statistical analysis of what's going to happen next, season. And then that's why you see, and then people vaccinate about 50% of the time. So no herd immunity, right? 50% just go for it, 50% get vaccinated. That's why the flu numbers never really go down, because half of the population don't vaccinate. And sometimes it doesn't work because I'm guessing, Dead vaccines, they're standard. I can kill it tomorrow, I can put it in a vial, and I can give it a month from now. mRNAs allow me to change the genetic code that we utilize. Remember, you have DNAs and you have RNAs. The RNA I can change quickly, cheaply, and fast, close to the season. COVID doesn't follow seasons. Flu, fortunately, follows seasons, so they're easy to manage, right? Pneumonia doesn't follow seasons. So, and then with the COVID vaccine, we do this. So we grab the spike protein, which is that little thing that I showed you on the picture. And then we take that and we take the genetic code from the spike protein, and that's the mRNA, right? And then we put it on a solution. And then what we do is we give it to the body. And the body will take the mRNA, not incorporate it into the DNA. Okay, that's one of the questions that I get all the time. You're changing my DNA. And the answer is no, because it's a different part of the sequence. Then it uses the mRNA to create a spike protein that creates an antibody to it. So then when you get COVID, you have a fighting chance rather than just getting overwhelmed, to create memory, right? So then it gives you time, those 3-4 days at the beginning that you feel really crappy. If you don't have the vaccine, you're creating antibodies. You're fighting it as fast as you can. I just give you a head start, So if you're sick, it will protect you and prevent you from getting sicker, So then the problem is, it was an average of 2 to 4 months. The immunity will go away. And that's one of the problems that we have with COVID. That's why you hear all these vaccines, right? It's a year long, immunity hinders, right? The patient doesn't hold his immunity and memory cells as long as we thought they were going to do.
With the COVID vaccine?
Yes. So a flu is a season, right? So you get a yearly. COVID, 3 months. So that's the catch, right? So you want to plan it throughout the day, throughout the year. How do we do it? Then it's more complicated than that. You have to look at, you don't, but we do. I look at the sequences that are added in the vaccine and compare year to year with my patients just tell me, what do I do? This year, don't take a shot. This year, take a shot. Because this sequence is what we need. This sequence is what's coming from Europe, from the Caribbean to here, not from Asia, right? So it's a lot more complicated. What I can tell you is October's vaccine, the one that just came out, is the new sequence. I'm going to get that next week. So then I'm protected for the next season. If you get COVID tomorrow, you should have about 2 to 3 months of immunity. So then after those 3 months, then I tell patients, why don't you just get the vaccine? Because you were exposed somewhere. Instead of getting a hit again, hit after hit after hit, stroke after stroke after stroke, or heart attacks, if you get a heart attack, I want to stop the next one, right? So this is the general idea, right? So then I vaccinate them at that point, and now we extend that more year duration of time. Yes.
So I didn't get the vaccine when I had it,
Mhm.
when it came out. I've had COVID at least 6 times.
Right.
And long COVID,
Yeah.
surely 6 months each time that
Yeah.
I've had it. At this point, going to get the original COVID vaccine would be obsolete, I'm assuming, because we.
You probably, I would not think that you can get the original 2022, I think 22, right? Yeah, vaccine. You would get the latest one.
Just the booster.
She's had.
I would just get the booster.
She's had long COVID.
Yeah.
Now, just for your information, I'm her mother.
Yeah.
And I took care of several COVID patients not knowing that they had COVID.
Mhm.
I have never had COVID.
Right.
And I've been coughed on.
You were not
sneezed on,
sick from
taken to
COVID.
the doctor.
I would say you are not sick from COVID.
So look at this genetically.
Anyway.
I had 2 vaccines in 2021, the 2 first ones.
Right.
And as you said, 3 months later, I was not, they couldn't be working anymore. It's
Right.
been years since I had COVID.
Right, so the question is, you would theorize, is your immune system, did the exposure that you get was enough to create disease, right? How many soldiers they attacked you? 2, were they enough that you just killed them off and you did well? Remember, exposure, right? I walked in the room with patient with, lack of COVID. I didn't get COVID, I shouldn't say that. I didn't get the disease from COVID. If I tested myself to the virus, which I can't because that's in vitro, that's in a lab company. Did I have virus in my system that my system was fighting? I don't know. I can't tell.
So you were non-symptomatic. but
I was non-symptomatic,
Infected.
right? So the idea would be, most people would tell you were lucky, because I don't know what happened to you. But we see patients like that. It's a different toy.
So one thing did happen to me. In 1968, I almost died from the Hong Kong flu.
Mhm.
I got it so bad
That's
as a very young.
That's an
person.
H1N1.
I almost died.
No, that was an H5N5.
So that
Yeah.
couldn't have transmitted any.
Immunity.
to me.
No, so it's a different virus. Yeah, that's a flu virus. The Hong Kong flu was really bad.
Really bad.
And that's one of the hallmarks that stimulated us to bug you guys, get a shot, If you ask me for the future, what's coming, that it's going to be a problem, I think it's going to be a flu. COVID is done, and that's going to be an influenza virus. But,
So at one point, someone was saying they're probably gonna combine COVID and flu and just do them both every year.
right.
Is that still up for the?
So this is the idea that they're floating, because mRNA vaccines are better, accurate, faster to produce. Why don't we convert flu into an mRNA? Why don't we convert everything else into an mRNA? Remember, mRNA vaccines, the vaccine use is new. We've been using mRNA techniques for 20 years. All that insulin that you see kids taking, that's mRNA built, So there are other states that we've been using it in medicine. So eventually that will be the day. I'm waiting for that to happen yet, but right now it's not. I think that's money. One company's building it, the other one, and they fight all those things. So, questions so far? Cool. Good. I'll leave it open to any more questions. Yeah,
So, real quick, can we do online questions real quick
Yeah.
for Maya?
Maya, can you do please?
Absolutely, yes. So thank you, Dr. Borras. So I do have a couple of questions that came in. One is about the flu vaccine. So what are you seeing in terms of effectiveness for this year? I know that vaccine changes, right? They sort of predict, or they try to predict what it's going to be like for the season.
So we started vaccinating. Okay, so there were 2 theories with the CDC. A couple of years ago, they came out with this idea that you could vaccinate any time of the year. right? Just get a flu shot, right? Because we just want to get people to get shots, right? Because they work. Then we realize, being seasonal, the flu, gets concentrated in October, November, December, January, February, up to March, and after that, gets warm enough, people get out of the houses, get out of the East Coast, out of the apartments, and they start going outside. So the concentration of flu in the air goes down. So that's point number one. Point number two, a vaccine is only as effective to the population. Remember, I'm counting people in the room, right? If 100 people are in this room, 50% don't believe in vaccines, they will never get vaccinated, 50% get vaccines, right? One of these people bring the disease, and if the disease matches the sequence that we gave the vaccine, that group will not get sick. But this group will screw up my numbers because they have flu. Now, if I vaccinate 100% of the group, then I get a clean shot at saying how accurate is this vaccine. What I would tell patients is, it's the best tool we have to protect you. Take it, and then mid through the season, I'll tell you, yeah, we missed it, and oops, I'm already through it to the next year, right? Because they're building next year's in November, January, right? Hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, and what about, the other question that I had was about, if you've had the chickenpox vaccine,
yes,
how does that impact your shingles risk? Because I know that it's, usually when you have already had chickenpox.
Right.
So how does that?
So that actually is a really good question. If you have chickenpox, you're at risk of the disease. If you have the vaccine and the vaccine still works, that's the big question, right? So I send the patient for a lab test and says, what is your antibody level of chickenpox, right? Varicella vaccine. And if the antibody is high, then you're more protected. If your antibody is 0, then you vaccinate. Same thing with MMR. I test them their levels, because MMRs, we give it as a kid. And then we come back and we measure them, and they're low or non-existent, which is usually what happens. And you would just revaccinate.
And how long does that normally, I know you said it sort of depended on each person. What is the typical length maybe for like the chickenpox vaccine then, if you were to get revaccinated because you checked the levels and it was low?
I would say 10 years.
10 years? Okay.
Yeah. Those are 10-year vaccines.
Great. Okay. And should we also be looking at hepatitis A and B as well?
Yep. So there are 7 different kinds of hepatitis. B, C, D, E, G, E. Yeah, so 6 to 7 different kinds of hepatitis. Fortunately, you guys only know A, B, and C. So C is bloodborne, sexually transmitted, sharing needles, don't have a vaccine. So if you have, share needles with somebody who has C, you probably will get it. If you have sex with somebody who has C, probably will get it eventually, A is foodborne. Montezuma's revenge, go to Mexico, come back with diarrhea, that might be A. So there is a vaccine for that, 2 shots, 6 months apart. If you like sushi, highly recommend it. Getting A from sushi, not a good thing. No, but I took the shot and I have sushi once a week. And I sleep good. Hepatitis B is a little bit more tricky, 3 shots, and sexually transmitted, so it's bloodborne, So so it's, again, recommended, and I test patients, and there's specific guidelines for C testing and B testing and all that stuff.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. I'm going to wrap up with our online audience. If anyone was interested in receiving the information that you provided, please, they can give us a call in the office and we can go ahead and email that to them. I'm going to turn it over to you for any more questions in person, Dr. Borras, and I just want to thank you for being here today.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks again for being here. We look forward to seeing you again. We will have our next presentation, which was actually rescheduled. So if you missed or were looking for the hemorrhoids, bold and bothersome, it was rescheduled to next Wednesday, October 30th at 4 p.m. with Dr. Peter Lee with Arizona Oncology. Please give us a call in the office if you are interested in that class. The phone number here is 520-324-1960. Also, watch for our new calendar to be coming out. It was just mailed yesterday, so you should be receiving that in your box so that you can see what is happening in November and December. We have a big diabetes focus in November, so with quite a few classes coming up, along with also a Medicare update. So if you are interested in any of those, give us a call. Registration is going to open tomorrow, 520-324-1960. Have a great day.